So one day I walked down the stairs and I was wearing earrings, and my daughter started shouting, "Mom, Mom, where are you going?" So there's a topic I wanted to dive into today because it is near and dear to my heart, and that is, why is it hard to be a stay-at-home parent? I can affirm that there are unexpected ways that it's hard to be a stay-at-home parent that people rarely talk about. This is the video that I wished I had 12 years ago when I became a stay-at-home mom. And while I am still home with a toddler and a baby, my older kids are in elementary school and middle school, so I have a different perspective. In this video, I'm going to share what it's really like, why it can be hard, and it's not always for the reasons people think, things that people say trying to help that are actually unhelpful, and what you can say instead, and finally, the reasons people might choose to do this with their life. People will say it must be hard because of the cooking and the cleaning, and in my experience, that's not why it's hard, and that's not all we do. This video is for anyone who's a stay-at-home parent who needs to be seen. This is for anyone who's thinking about becoming a stay-at-home parent who wants to know the honest truth about what it's really like. And it's also for anyone who's offering support to someone who's a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad. When people think of a household where one of the parents stays at home, the first and most obvious thing that they think of is loss of income. While that is obviously a change and it does require sacrifices and budgeting, you lose additional benefits too, like your 401k matching from your employer. But putting that aside, that's something quantitative. I'm going to talk today about the things that you can't quantify that people generally don't talk about. So one of the things that I have noticed is that suddenly no one talks to you about money. Generally, if the topic of money comes up, people will automatically turn to my husband to talk about it and not to me. I don't know why that is, but it's a real thing. Another thing that nobody talks about is that you are always around food as a stay-at-home parent. You are either planning a meal, shopping for a meal, prepping a meal, serving a meal, or cleaning up from a meal. When you're home, you're always near your refrigerator and your pantry, and when you're out, you always have a big bag full of snacks. So food is always there. It's always a temptation. It is something that I'm constantly grappling with as a mom. On a more serious note, when people find out that I'm a stay-at-home mom, the first thing that they used to want to always say to me, and you know what it is, you know the advice they gave, it was, "Did you know you need to get out of the house? It's good to plan things and have places to go." And when someone would say this to me, it affirmed what I already feared, which is that people must think I'm really dumb. People were well-meaning, but it's not like I forgot how to drive my car. The loss of identity was already hard enough for me, not having a profession. The idea that I wouldn't make plans for myself felt like people had already forgotten who I really was. So, what's a more helpful thing to say to a stay-at-home parent? You might say something more general, like, what's a way that you stay involved with your community? I went out of my way to try to find activities that we could do during the day. Regardless though, it was still hard to make friends at the beginning. And one of the things that people don't realize, especially if they're perhaps an older generation, is that there just aren't that many of us stay-at-home parents anymore. Maybe the percentage of parents who are working full-time is higher in the area where I live, but it did feel like there were not that many stay-at-home moms. I knew some stay-at-home moms, a few stay-at-home dads, but our numbers were small. I became a mom before a lot of my friends, so it did feel more isolating in that during the day I knew they were at work when I was at home, and this was pre-COVID. In the mornings I could see all my neighbors driving to work, and there I was not going to work, and it was part of the broader problem where I felt like I was out of step with the rest of the world. There are a couple reasons for this. One is that when you are home with little ones, you are on their schedule. You're on a nap schedule. And if you want to be on the go and let them nap on the go, it's still difficult because you're trying to decide, do I let them sleep? Do I not? You're always confined to a little kid schedule. It's hard to be home, but it's also hard to be out. It's really strange to feel like everyone else is on a work schedule or everyone else is on the school schedule and you are not. And for some people, they may love being different and being on a different schedule than everybody else. And besides, Not having coworkers, that was a huge adjustment for me. As much as my husband and I are a team during the day, and even because he had long hours, often nights and weekends, he would be at work and I would be here with the kids. And it's not the same as talking to a friend or a grandparent because they might love you, they might want the best for you, but they're not raising your kids together with you. Friends are great, but of course, everyone is in their own homes with their own families, raising their own kids. So you might go out and socialize for an hour or two, but then everybody's back taking care of their own families. It's not the same as working together towards a goal. And all the while, other people might say things that they think are helpful, like, oh, I really enjoyed my parental leave. I really enjoyed my maternity leave. Or some people might think it's like having a day off from work. But it's very different when your role is to be at home with children for the foreseeable future with no end in sight. And if you are someone who worked with someone who then became a stay at home mom or a stay at home dad, if you think about them, let them know you're thinking about them. Check in on them. It's easy to feel like you've been forgotten. So it helps so much to just have someone check on you and to feel like you're not invisible. The crazy thing about not having a job outside the home that I didn't think about till I became a stay at home mom is that you don't really have to go to the salon. You don't need to have a modern wardrobe. You really could just wear sweatpants every day, which can be nice and comfortable, but it's easy to fall into a rut. So, one of the things that could be so helpful if you are a friend who's a stay at home parent is to invite them out. Invite them out where they have to put on real clothes and look nice. It makes such a difference, even just to have a couple hours out where you're not doing kid things. And something that I really hate to admit is that when my older kids were little, for the first few years that I was a stay at home mom, I really felt like I didn't deserve to have my nails done. I didn't deserve to have nice clothes. I couldn't tell you why, but I was afraid of becoming spoiled or seeming spoiled because I didn't make the money that our family was living on. Then I went through some health stuff after I had my second baby. And if you watch my video about postpartum weight gain and the underlying health issue that caused that, you can watch my story there. But the point is that after I had my third baby, I realized I really needed to take better care of myself so that I could better care for my family. And after that, my attitude did change. And I realized that I'm working hard too. And so it is okay if I didn't get a chance to make dinner, it's okay to order pizza on a Friday night. So if you have a spouse or a friend or a sibling who is staying at home, one of the things you can do for them is to remind them that it's okay to allow themselves some kind of a luxury or convenience that fits in their budget. Another thing that's surprising about being a stay at home mom or dad is that you might not actually be home that much. And maybe I'm thinking of this differently now because I have older kids, but a lot of their extracurriculars will start at 4 in the afternoon. So I have to be ready to go at 3:30, which is kind of early in terms of a work day. And during the school day, they might have activities at school, or we might have appointments or therapy. I feel like we're always at the doctor or the dentist or the orthodontist, or we have speech therapy or OT or all those other things that just come with living life as a family. So I feel like a lot of days we're really actually not even home that much. And speaking of which, just because you're home doesn't mean that you actually have more free time. I always have this idea in my head that I'm going to get all this stuff done and that I'm going to have the whole day ahead of me. But realistically, kids interrupt constantly. If they're little, they interrupt because they have constant needs. And if they're older, they interrupt because they always want to talk to you. And if you think about it, if you were working at a daycare or nannying all day, you really wouldn't get anything done during the day for yourself. So it's basically the same when you're home with your kids. I had this idea in my head that if I was a stay-at-home mom that I could volunteer a lot at school during the day, but in all reality, I have the little ones too, and I don't have someone to watch them during the day. So I can't always help at school as much as I thought I was going to be able to. Plus, you know how it goes when you have kids. It feels like someone is always homesick. And summers are crazy. You think summer is going to be so wonderful. We're going to have all this time to do fun things. I can tell you this past summer, being home with kids in middle school and grade school and a toddler and a baby. It felt like a lot. It was really hard to entertain all those different age groups. And as much as I would give my older kids chores and they had to read and practice their instruments and they had a long list of things they were supposed to do every day, like help with laundry. Once they got those things done, they still had the whole rest of the day in front of them. And I have to tell you, I had this romanticized image in my head of what it would be like to be home with my kids in the summer. The older kids don't want to do baby things, but the babies don't always go along with what the older kids want to do. So it was challenging. And when you're a stay at home mom or a stay at home dad, it can feel like you don't really have anything that's your own. You don't have your own work, but also my purse is a diaper bag. My attire is made up almost entirely of gym clothes. My kids are constantly trying to use my devices, and my car is a minivan. When you're a parent in general, you have to assume that what you're doing matters because you are in it for the long haul. I've been a stay at home mom for over a decade, and my youngest is a baby. So we still have another 2 decades to go with raising kids. And it can feel like I don't know what the outcome's going to be. I'm trying my best, but you don't really see the results until many, many years later. And so I do think that being a parent, whether you stay at home or whether you're working full time, it can feel like it's a very long time till you see how your kids are going to turn out. And I think a common misconception is that you assume if someone is a stay-at-home parent that their kids are getting what they need. But I can tell you there are so many days when I feel like I did not do a good job, even if you were physically with them all day. I remember going through a particularly hard time. There was a loss that we had experienced, and I remember envying that my husband would go to work and he had to think about other things besides what we were going through. I felt like I was marinating in all of my sad feelings. And I remember a friend who is a stay at home mom said to me, you know, when you're a stay at home mom, you're alone with your thoughts. And that really is something that can be a challenge. And friendships are great. But I found that it was hard to make friends as a stay at home parent. Building friendships was very slow going, which surprised me because previously, when we were childless, we would go out and make friends. And then I realized when you are a parent, everyone is very invested in their own families. And so friendship does generally take a back seat to your family because your family needs you so much. And also, when you're going out during the day, everything that you do has to be kid oriented. So you're probably doing stuff at the YMCA or at the library or at a church, but it is all kid oriented and it's very hard to visit and really talk and get to know people when people are running after kids the whole time. And I put way too much pressure on myself to go to activities that sometimes we did not enjoy. I remember there was one librarian who really liked tickle games, and my daughter did not like to be tickled. So the librarian would be encouraging us to tickle our children, and everyone would be going, and you think in theory that all of these kid activities are going to be fun, but sometimes they're not fun for you and they're not fun for your child. So if you're feeling like that, I'm going to give you permission today. You do not have to do activities that you do not enjoy or that your children do not enjoy. And if you want to be helpful to your spouse or to a friend who is a stay-at-home parent, please encourage them to do the activities that are fulfilling to them and that they and the kids enjoy. Do not put pressure on them to go to things that they don't want to do. Another thing that I think people don't realize when they have childcare is how hard it can be to not have childcare. It sounds so obvious, but I would hear parents say, oh, I'm going to leave them at daycare for an extra hour and then do my Christmas shopping. Or when they had another baby, they would still send their older child to daycare. It's not like that for stay-at-home parents. That's the choice we've made. That's the trade-off. That's part of our lifestyle. But one day I had an emergency and I desperately needed childcare and I couldn't find someone to watch my older kids and I really had to get to the doctor. And I remember thinking, I really just wish they were at daycare today so that I could go to my doctor's appointment because this is a medical emergency. I went from person to person. I finally found a neighbor who left her work site to come back home to watch my kids for me. If you don't have any backup, it can be really challenging. So people will sometimes ask me if I think I will work again one day. And I lovingly tell them, oh, don't worry. We have 5 kids. The workforce will get plenty of time out of my husband and me. We'll definitely have to work till we're 90. But that gets me to another point, which is that if you know someone who's a stay-at-home parent, it is totally fine to ask them what they did before. I don't mind if someone asks me what my professional background is or what I studied in school. I think sometimes people are afraid to ask those things. I think it's totally fine and might even be kind of nice to ask about the kind of work that they've done. All right, so at this point, you might be thinking, why would anybody choose to be a stay-at-home mom? Why would anybody choose to be a stay-at-home dad? I'm going to tell you that first of all, it is very convenient when you have kids. If they are sick, you are always available. If there's an emergency at school and you need to pick somebody up, you are always there to go get them. It's honestly really nice to know if you wake up and someone is sick, you don't have to call out from work, you don't have to reschedule meetings, you're always available to care for a sick child. And there are times of the year when your kids might be sick a lot. If you're a parent, you know how this goes. So there have been years where I have thought, if I worked, I think I would have seriously had to quit my job because we had so many days where somebody was home from school sick. I will also say that it does make things, I think, more peaceful at home. Where I think this really pays off is the attention that you can give to your spouse. I can just say for me personally, because I do tend to get very laser focused on work, that it does free up some of my brain space to be able to just pay more attention to my husband, spend more time with him, spend more time talking to him. I can do nicer things for him. And I can't speak for anybody else. I'm sure there are lots of marriages where the couple does a great job of balancing everything. I can just speak for myself. I can be a better spouse personally if I'm pulled in fewer directions. And finally, I know that down the road, I will never look back and say, I wish I had spent more time with my kids because I couldn't possibly. I'm sure there are a lot of parents who work full time who do a great job giving their kids attention and being there for their families. For me, with having 5 kids, I'm not sure that I could give them as much one-on-one attention if I were being pulled in more directions. And that's not in any way to say that I'm doing a great job. There are so many days when I feel like I did not do a good job as a mom. But I hope that one day I will be able to look back and say I spent as much time with my children when they were growing up as I possibly could. I think you need to live your life fully and make the decision that is overall the best one for your family. And I know there are parents out there who are working and spending time with their kids and they're doing an amazing job. I think for our family personally, it's been a good option for us, but let me know your thoughts in the comments. I feel like so many of you probably have things to add to this list, the pros, the cons. Please let me know what you're thinking because I would love to hear from you. I love getting feedback and encouragement from other families. Don't forget to subscribe because we're going to be talking about a lot of topics here related to growing a family, raising a family, marriage, parenting, and life in general. So don't forget to subscribe. Please stay in touch and take care.